You are not just another hustling salesperson. You are the expert, the resource, the valuable partner for your clients. And how you grow your business should reflect how your clients see you. Welcome to the Roadmap to Grow Your Business podcast. We generate referrals without asking, build positive client experiences, and help you take control of your business. Here's your charmingly sarcastic host, Stacy Brown Randall.
Hey there, and welcome to episode 149 of the Roadmap to Grow Your Business podcast. I'm your host, Stacy Brown Randall. Okay, before we dive in, what's on deck? What do I have coming up to help you guys? Well, we have our next live referrals challenge kicking off on May 3rd. That's right. You got to get signed up if you want to participate in our next live challenge, which you can sign up at stacybrownrandall.com/challenge. And you know, Stacy has an E. Now, the challenge is going to be live in our Referrals Without Asking Facebook group, but you're going to want to sign up so you can receive the daily emails that tell you what to do and so you know how to tackle each day of the challenge. And it's only 4 days. So folks, you can do this. We are going to be teaching you how to think like a referral ninja master. This is definitely one of our favorites. I love teaching it, and I believe you guys love learning it. Now, some of you are listening right now, and you have said to yourself for a while, one day I'm going to do one of those challenges with Stacy, and you haven't. So guess what? Now is that day. Well, technically May 3rd is that day, but right now I need you to sign up so you can join me. I can't wait to have you join us for the How to Think Like a Referral Ninja Master Challenge that starts on May 3rd and is just for 4 simple days. Remember to sign up at stacybrownrandall.com/challenge. Okay, let's dive into today's episode. So this is an episode like I've never done before. Now, of course, it's the same format and all that good stuff, but I'm actually doing this podcast recording for this episode on location. That sounds, I just think I wanted to call it that because it made me sound all Hollywood, right? Like, oh, I'm on location. And the truth is, I'm actually sitting in a bed and breakfast, my favorite bed and breakfast in Asheville, North Carolina. And I am on a writer's weekend and I am writing book number 2. So if you're wondering and you ever come to Asheville and you're like, what is that bed and breakfast Stacy loves so much? It's the Chestnut Street Inn on Chestnut Street. It's pretty amazing. So I'm here on location. I'm working on writing book number 2. And I've never done an on-location episode before. But as I was thinking through the last few episodes that I had done, you guys know I typically batch produce these in advance. And this one I specifically held not to do that. I'm sure Andy, my editor, is like, great, we have a last-minute edit for you, Stacy. But I wanted to be able to be here in the middle of my writer's weekend and record this episode and talk about some things specific for this book that I'm working on, but that I actually have a message I really want to share with all of you that I hope will be helpful and inspirational to you too. And so I've never done an episode on location before. And if you guys could see me right now, you would probably start laughing because I'm sitting on the bed in my bedroom of the bed and breakfast. And I've got as much fluffy stuff around me because Andy, my editor, always says you want to absorb the noise. I don't really know what this is going to sound like. I know Andy and his team will make me sound as amazing as possible. But guys, bear with me if this isn't the same production value that you're used to when I'm sitting in my studio with all of my actual equipment doing the recording. And I'm sitting here and I'm literally holding the microphone. So we may want to expect this episode to be a little on the short and sweet side because at some point my hand and my arm are going to fall off and I'm not going to be able to hold this forever. Usually, if you've ever seen one of my live Facebook lives or any of my videos that I've done, you've seen my microphone is like set up next to me. I don't ever have to hold it. And here I am holding it, propping my arm up on my leg as I sit crisscross applesauce, which is cross-legged for those of you who don't have kids. I sit crisscross applesauce on the bed recording this episode. Okay, so thank you for your understanding and bearing with me. Let's talk about book number 2. So I wanted to talk about why book number 2 has taken so long for me to get it done. And let's be honest, I'm sitting here right now and it's not still done, but it has a done date in mind. It's coming. There's a deadline. It's a goal for this year, so it will be done. But I wanted to talk about why writing book number 2 is really making me face head on a bunch of my hangups. Now, we all have hangups. I'm no different than you, and you're no different than me, and we all have hangups, and they all look different, and they're all specific to the world that we live in and the hangups that we allow in our lives. So let me just quickly give you a backstory, and then I'll talk a little bit about the hangups that have held me back from writing this book, and hopefully they will inspire you. So book number 1, as you guys know, is Generating Business Referrals Without Asking. So if you've listened to this podcast for any length of time, or maybe you found this podcast because you read the book. So the first book, Generating Business Referrals Without Asking, was actually published in October of 2018. The plan was book number 2 to be published in 2020. So having a book published every 2 years. I don't know, I picked that up from another author back in the day, and I kind of liked the idea of that rhythm. Well, so book number 2 was supposed to be published in 2020. I got my publishing deal towards the end of 2019. The book was technically due to the publisher January, February of 2020. I needed an extension, and then, COVID. And I got really good for the rest of 2020 of using COVID as my excuse for why book number 2 wasn't anywhere near being ready to go. Some of those excuses, I'll be honest, were very real, and some of them, they weren't. And I'm a big enough girl to be able to admit it. So book number 2 is actually about building sticky client experiences so you can be referable. The idea behind this is I feel like I'm writing my own Star Wars, right? You know how Star Wars started with the end, and then they went back in time and told all the stories leading up that made the first movie make sense. Okay, so that's kind of the same thing that I've been doing with Sticky Client Experience, is that I wrote the book on how you get referrals. But the truth is, before you can get referrals, you've got to be referable, which means you got to have the right kind of client experience. So when I came out with the first book, Generating Business Referrals Without Asking, in the back of my head, I kind of always knew that that's what book number 2 would be about, was about sticky client experience. In fact, I have a program on that. I have had, as long as I've had my signature program, Growth by Referrals, which is where I teach my referrals without asking methodology and strategy. I have had a companion program that goes along with Growth by Referrals called Sticky Client Experience. I don't know why all my programs have 3 words in them, but they are all 3-word titles. All my programs, even Goal Finishers Club. How crazy is that? And Reverse Goal Setting. Oh my gosh, that's really bad. Okay, anyways, I digress. My apologies. So I've always had the Sticky Client Experience program. It's always been a complement or a companion to the Growth by Referrals program. I just happened to write my first book on the referrals piece because that's the message I wanted to get out first. But I've always told people, if you ever struggle with getting referrals, there could be many reasons for that. It could be you don't have a process and a system in place to generate referrals without asking. Hence, what I teach in my book, and of course, what I go deeper on and teach more of in the Growth by Referrals program. But the other issue, and sometimes I have to be the bearer of bad news, is that you're not getting referrals because you're not referable, which is, of course, where the Sticky Client Experience program came from. And now I am writing the book that is going to also, be part of my Star Wars, right? And it is going back to have another book written specifically to share with folks about what it looks like to build a sticky client experience, but specifically to do that for small business owners and solopreneurs. Because there's a ton of information out there in the space today, if you're a large company, of how you can power the technology to help you build the most whiz-bang amazing client experience ever. But I think they're way too complicated for small business owners and solopreneurs. So I like teaching things in a very simple way that can have massive impact. So just like I teach in my Growth by Referrals program, I'm teaching in the Sticky Client Experience program is hey, we can take the best practices from what is out there in the marketplace and bigger companies are doing, but we can find a way to implement it and have the application of it in a way that works for us as small business owners and solopreneurs. Okay, so that's what the book is about. That's a little bit of the backstory, right? Of what book number 2 is and why it's delayed because of really COVID. But that's actually not the real reason the book is so delayed. I do hope that I will finish it soon and then it will actually be able to be published in 2021, but it very well could be a 2022 publish date. And so when I started thinking about why is it taking me so long to get this book done, I really had to face the facts that I've got a couple of hangups with it. And one of those hangups is writing a book is hard. Maybe it's not for you if you've ever written a book, but it is for me. Writing a book is hard, and I'm a writer by nature. I actually enjoy writing, but still writing a book is hard. And so one of the hangups for me was just my thought around this process, because here's the thing. I know exactly what this process is like. I have been through it before. I've lived it. I lived it throughout 2017 and part of 2018 as I was getting the first book written to the publisher, accepted, and then like in, appropriate form to be published. Like, I know what this is like. It reminds me of when my husband said he wanted to own a restaurant and people would be like, oh, Stacy, that's awesome because like your family owned restaurants. So you know exactly what this is going to look like. Like, you're not in for any surprises. And I would be like, exactly. I know exactly what it's like to own a restaurant, which means I know exactly what's coming. And sometimes, like that's not necessarily a positive. And let me tell you, blank pages are not really pretty when you're writing. But I do know that most of this hang up is actually in my head. And when I sat down this morning to do a full morning block of writing, things started to flow. And that old adage of just get started and you'll be good, for me, it is actually true when it comes to writing. I know this hang up of this, oh my gosh, this process, the writing and the rewriting and the editing and the getting the feedback and getting your feelings hurt, through the process of just getting the book done to manuscript form and getting it to your publisher. I know what this process is like. But the truth is, this is a process that I can manage and handle because I've done it before, right? So one of my hangups is just the thought of the time intensive it takes to get the book done and to do this process. That's one of my hangups. But the truth is, my other hangup has been the real roadblock for me. We all know everything we put out in the world is going to be judged. Fact of life. Some people will love what you put out in the world and some will not. And every time I read a review that was posted about my first book, I was reminded of that, right? Some people loved it. Most people loved it, thank goodness. But we know we're not for everybody. I'm not for everybody. My business isn't for everybody. My books aren't for everybody. They're not supposed to be. And that's okay. But reminding ourselves that that's okay is actually where the problem sets in for me. I have had a lot of internal conversations in my own head about worrying about my ability to write a second book that can perform as well as my first. My first book has won 3 awards, even first place awards. It has over 100 5- and 4-star reviews on Amazon and amazingly kind, beautiful, thoughtful things written about it in terms of how it has impacted people. It has sold thousands and thousands of copies, and I should know that number. Every good author should, but I just don't know my numbers because I don't track them on purpose. It has sold thousands of copies, and it's given, companies like Wells Fargo give it as part of their onboarding when they hire a new small business banker. And that's not the only company, I believe, that does that. And I get emails about it being featured in someone's book club within their company or within their networking group. And sometimes I'm even invited to speak to those book clubs, and it's so fun. And I get emails of people saying how much they love the book and what it has meant to them. I mean, I can remember one day specifically where I got an email from somebody that said they hated my book and that they're sure I'm a good writer, but I wrote an entire book that did not showcase my knowledge on networking. And if I had just written a better book and really tackled networking like the book was supposed to be about, it would have been a better book. And I was like, the book's not about networking. Where in the world did you get that idea that this book is not a good book because it's not on networking? Because it's not supposed to be on networking. And that was immediately followed up. I kid you not. I call it a God moment. 33 seconds later, it felt like another email from somebody who I really respect had read the book and I didn't know had read it and then gushed about it. And he was like, this is an awesome book. So I got a book from somebody who I didn't really know, who was basically like, I'm sure you know a lot about networking. You just didn't do a good job displaying it in your book. And I'm thinking, the book's not about networking. To somebody that I really respect who read the book. And I didn't even ask for feedback and said how awesome it was. So here's the thing. Again, I've had a lot of internal conversations about myself worrying about my ability here. And my fear is this, that this book number 2, won't measure up. There, I said it. That's my fear. But I sit here today on location in my writer's weekend with this awesome opportunity to be away from my family and to be free to focus and do what I am actually good at, which is writing. And I'm proving myself, as I sit here today, I'm proving to myself that I am bigger than my fear. In this moment, I am just holding on to God's hand and letting him lead me step by step and just doing the best that I can. For some of you, my best will be a book that you love and that helps you and that you have aha moments with, and the light bulb will go off when you read it, and you will put in place the most amazing sticky client experience, which will open you up to being able to be referable, and it will be a game changer for you. I know for some of you, that is what I'm working on. That is the book that you are going to read. I am writing it for you. It was meant for you. You're going to get this book and you're going to love it, and you're going to apply what you learn. You're not just going to read it and think that was great. You're going to apply and then have success. You are who I write for. Whoever and all of you people are who feel like that and think like that and have results like that, when you actually take in what I say and then do it and have success, you are who I'm writing my second book for. For others of you, well, they won't like it or they won't get it, which that's okay too. And that is all right. Either way is okay. But as I sit here on this weekend, on my on location and recording this episode, I just wanted to acknowledge my hang up. I just thought it was because as business owners, sometimes we look at the bright, shiny facade of the outside of what it looks like with someone's business, and we think about how great it is, right? I mean, I know people reach out to me and they're like, oh my gosh, you've got so many great things moving. You've got all these irons in the fire. All these great things are happening. I see you on social media. All these cool things are happening. And I'm like, some days it's like, am I going to get a shower today? Right? I mean, like there's that pretty social media, that pretty marketing facade that's out there. And for me, a lot of that is my truth. Like a lot of that is, I don't try to show up fakely on social media at all. And so a lot of that is my truth. A lot of good things are happening in my business, and that's great. And I hope a lot of good things are happening for you as well. But I didn't want anyone to ever think that everything is ever perfect and pretty. And I think you guys know that. Those are my longtime listeners who've been listening to this. You guys know I share kind of like the ins and the outs from that perspective. I mean, I keep it focused on what I'm teaching, but there are obviously pieces and parts of what I'm learning being a business owner. Now with my second business, of course, of being able to share with you guys. And that's what I wanted to put out here today. I really wanted for you guys to understand my hangups, because you probably have some of your own and they may be holding you back. Mine have. This hangup of my fear of that this book won't measure up to my first book has definitely been a hangup that has been just attached to me like a ball and chain weight around my neck for over a year, for more than 12 months. And if I'm thinking about it, actually, I think even as I was publishing the first book and I thought about having to get started on the second book, I'm pretty sure that's when the hang-up started. And it has only grown over time as book number one has been so well received by so many of you. And so I just wanted to share that no matter what we see on the outside, from that pretty facade, from that perfectly poised right front stage, that sometimes there's just a mess going on the backstage. And for me, with this book, with this part of my business, yet I've got this fear that this book won't measure up, but that's not stopping me, because I am moving forward and I will publish my second book, and I will probably shouldn't, but I will read the Amazon reviews, the good and the bad. And even though I try really hard not to read the bad anymore, that is one thing I've learned. And I'll do what I can, and I'll put out what I can and what I'm supposed to. And those that it is supposed to impact, it'll impact. And those that it's not supposed to impact, it won't. And I can't control that. And I know that. And I just have to keep reminding myself of that. But the one thing I have decided is that it's not keeping me from moving forward the way I intend and how I want to help you all. So I'm doing it. We'll see what it turns out to be, right? But I just wanted to share this with you guys for episode 149. All right, you guys know anything from our show, anything from this episode that you want to find in the show notes can be found on the show notes page at stacybrownrandall.com/149. And of course, I would love to know I'm not alone with having some business hangups. Would you be willing to share in our referrals without asking Facebook group what your hangups are in business? I mean, I'm putting mine out there. I would love for you maybe to just share one of yours. I have more than I've shared today, don't get me wrong, but I would love for you to share your thoughts on this episode or on your hangups that you have with your business in our referrals without asking Facebook group. Okay, and next week is episode 150. Whoop, whoop. Would you be willing to leave a 5-star rating and written review of the podcast for an honor as we kind of hit that marker of 150 episodes? Many of you have. And Jordan, thank you, my friend, for posting in our Referrals Without Asking Facebook group for folks to support me with this. That was a very kind post to encourage people to go out and post. We've had many of you guys post. Sometimes some of you are just hitting the ratings, and that's great. We'll take your 5 stars all day long. And sometimes some of you have taken time to actually write a written review. And we love that as well. So thank you for that as well. We have a ways to go to hit 150. That's actually not my goal. But if we get there, well, at any point, that will be amazing. So if you haven't written a review or given a rating of the podcast, would you please consider doing that as we approach next week, our 150th episode? And as I mentioned last week, we are starting to talk more about the sticky client experience, hence what for this episode and the series that we're going to start with episode 151. So we're going to really start digging into the things that I'm writing about in the book, some key lessons I want to pull out and showcase for you guys here on the podcast. It won't be as in-depth as the book is, of course, but some key things that I want to be able to give to you guys here listening on the podcast while you're waiting for the book to be available, of course. So next week, though, we're going to pause from Sticky Client Experience. We're going to have our 150th episode. I'm really excited. It's a surprise episode 150. So you guys know what to do, though. Until then, please, my friends, take control and grow your business. Bye for now.
Thanks for listening to the Roadmap to Grow Your Business podcast. To access all resources and links mentioned in today's show and to connect with Stacy, head over to www.stacybrownrandall.com.